Welcome to the Southern California Writers Association featured monthly speaker. I'm Maddie Margarita, and I have the pleasure of introducing our very special guest today. Joe Ide grew up in South Central Los Angeles. As a child, he loved Sherlock Holmes stories, an interest which continued long into his adult life. He began his writing career as a screenplay writer, then moved on to writing novels. His first novel, IQ, was published in 2016, followed by Righteous, Wrecked, High Five, and Smoke. Rapper Snoop Dogg is producing the TV adaptation for his IQ detective series after TV rights were snapped up in a 7-way bidding war. Among other things this morning, Joe is going to be talking about his recent novel, The Goodbye Coast, featuring the iconic Phillip Marlowe in a vividly reimagined present-day Los Angeles. Hope you all now join me in welcoming our special guest, Joe Ide.
There's something about this crowd that's a little sketchy, like they're there are outstanding warrants in the room. Well, I'm glad to see you again. It's very nice to be here again. I thought I'd talk about a few things. A little about my background. My family, mom, dad, 4 sons, we lived with our grandparents. They were very old world Japanese, barely spoke English, but very refined people. They were not like other grandparents in the sense that they despised me. I'm not kidding. They loathed me. For the longest time, I thought their pet name for me was Urusai ne, but it turns out that means, get out of here, you little asshole. It's a rough translation. They had reasons. My grandmother had this perfectly manicured, beautiful little Japanese garden. I kept pet rabbits. They got out of their pen and mowed it down. It was biblical. And the rabbits had all day, to work, and before somebody came home, and it was down to the ground. They destroyed everything. And I had to keep the rabbits next door so that my grandfather wouldn't hack them to death with one of his samurai swords. And Gramps had a beautiful, wonderful collection. The swords were very rare. They looked brand new, and they were as sharp as you might imagine. They were 600-700 years old. And collectors from all over the world, very distinguished people, would come to our little raggedy house in the hood to see them. Most of them now are in the National Museum in Tokyo. My Gramps kept them in this long drawer, and they were bound in these elaborate silk wrappings. And the care of them is a very meticulous thing. There are specific ways to sheathe and unsheathe them. You never touch the blade. If you're looking at them, you rest it on these little silk pillows made especially for that. You put a silk handkerchief in your mouth so you won't breathe on them. And so I'm 12 years old. I'm home alone. Open the drawer, take one out, and I just whip it out. You're just not supposed to do that. And I start playing pirate. So I'm jumping around, floor to furniture, back down again, swinging this 600-year-old national treasure. And there was this wooden lamp, like 5 feet or so, and I cut it in half. I just felled it like a tree. Well, I'm not a bright kid, so I'm worried about the lamp. And suddenly, there's my grandfather. Right now, we were about the same size. He was purple with rage, purple. I thought he was going to kill me, like truly kill me. He picked me up like this, and he threw me through the screen door, not into it, through it. My head was sticking out of the other side like a hunting trophy. And so I was alienated from my family and all things to do with Japanese. We were really struggling. we were, sometimes I'd open my lunch bag and there'd be a sandwich with mayonnaise and lettuce in it. And I'd be looking at my brother and Mom, forget the bologna, you know, what's happening here? We were always worried, you know, about can we pay the utilities and what's the price of gas and can we afford a trip to the doctor? Once my dad, wise guy, takes me outside, points up at the sky and says, see that, son? That's the poverty line. And when you grow up like that, you know, your first thought is always survival. How do I get through this immediate situation? You know, like I need a pair of shoes, and how am I going to pay for them? And you know, you just don't have thoughts about the future because it's just too abstract. You know? So I had no ambition. I had no direction. In high school, I was decidedly mediocre. I think I'm the only person ever to get a straight C- report card. I went to college. I don't remember any of it. I went to grad school because my friends were in the program. I majored in education, which is a noble profession, but I had no interest in it. And after you get a graduate degree in education, the sort of natural thing to do is teach school. So I was teaching grades 4 through 6 in this big open area classroom. I'm there about 3 days when I realized I don't like kids. Really, they just bugged the hell out of me. You know, they're so noisy and fussy, and they were always asking me questions. If you were in my class, you had a lot of fun, but you didn't learn anything. After that, I had a string of jobs. I was a business consultant, middle management. I was part of the staff of an NGO that provided legal services. You know, one thing after another, never more than a year. I'd be restless. I was unhappy. And I used to whine about being a writer. Oh, I want to be a writer. I want to be a writer. And the woman I was living with at the time said, you know, you should either write or shut up. I thought that was a little harsh. And we broke up shortly thereafter. But it did get me off my tail. And I was trying to be a screenwriter. And I wrote 12 bad screenplays, 12 terrible screenplays before I wrote a decent one. It sold to Disney, and I started to work. And I worked for most of the majors, and I sold specs and did rewrites and assignments and those kinds of things. But nothing was getting made. You know, the projects would just fall out for one Hollywood reason after another. Studio head gets fired, the budget's too big, the star drops out. One of the very first things I wrote was for Bernie Mac. They wanted Bernie and me in this movie. And it took me months. I wrote it, had to rewrite it several times. Then everybody's happy. Producers, studio executives, development people, everybody's happy. And then Bernie died. What is that? What is that? So after a succession of these kinds of things happened, I was so incredibly frustrated, and I was physically repelled by opening the screenwriting program. So I quit. Absolutely nobody noticed, but but I quit, and I got, you know, being a screenwriter was a big part of my self-concept, and so I was depressed. You know, seriously, I was seriously depressed. And I moped around, and I felt sorry for myself, and I took long walks with my dog, you know, looked soulfully out to sea, that kind of thing. And I realized, you know, that I have to pay the mortgage, and my only skill is writing. That's it. So I decided to write a novel. It took me 3 years to write. And I had to take out a second on the house. And I ended up paying the loan with the loan. The financial advisor, you wouldn't let anybody do that. But finally, I saw that screenplay. But I'm getting frustrated, and I decided to write a novel. And that was IQ. Since then, I've been on a pretty good run. You know, I get to write full time, which is a huge luxury. My books, for the most part, have been well received, and I'm signed up to do more books. You know, they say money won't bring you happiness. Well, neither will it bring you unhappiness. I have an uncle, a very, very successful businessman, and he's given to cliches. He calls me up, he says, Joe, success is a double-edged sword. You know, even the upside, even the bright side is going to bring problems. Well, I'm looking at a residual check thinking, who cares? He also repeated this adage in so many words, that success is built on failure. You know, you fall down, you keep getting up, and eventually you'll be successful. But in my experience, failure is most often built on failure. If you write a 300-page novel, huge undertaking, and it doesn't work or it's unpublishable, man, it's very hard to get up from that. And most people just can't do it, can't write another novel. I think you're way more likely to be successful if you do it right the first time, especially in publishing, where your opportunities to put your work in front of a real gatekeeper, agent, you know, editor, it's going to be once, maybe twice. And there's no second chances. You know, there's no do-overs. You wasted their time, and so they move on. Okay, my point here. Hi. I'm speaking too softly. My point here is another cliche. Be patient. And what this means in a practical sense is one, don't give yourself a deadline. Unless you've had a lot of experience, how do you know how long it's going to take to write a chapter or 2 chapters of the book itself? You know, it's like guessing how fast you can run a mile, having never run a mile before. And I think, in most part, the deadlines, these self-imposed deadlines, make you hurry. And I think that's one of the main reasons why most aspiring writers fall short. They have the talent, they have the motivation, but they want to get it out like now. They're in effect going to test the waters with the finished product. Even though they know on some level it isn't ready. But rather than considering that doubt, they shop it with predictable results. You kind of have to imprint this on your brain. It's going to take as long as it takes. It took me 3 years to write IQ. And my estimation at the outset was a year. And if I had stuck to that year, it would have been a crappy novel. I don't count words, because the objective becomes how many words as opposed to the quality of the writing. You know, you think you've accomplished something by writing, you know, 1,000 words a day, but for many aspiring writers, what you've done is you write these thousands of words that really don't cut it. You know? And then you have to go back and rewrite 100,000 words that you wrote when your skill level really wasn't there yet. I know there are a lot of big time writers who count words, but they already know what they're doing. You know, it's mostly a discipline thing. You know, I'm going to write 500 words before I go play golf. But they know how to do this already. They're not grappling with skill sets. There's a difference between strategy and tactics. Strategy is your main objective. Tactics are your means of getting there. There's the war analogy. The objective is to win the war, and the means are bombs, drones, attacking supply lines, whatever it is. In writing, your strategy, the big objective, is of course finishing your book. But your tactics, the means of getting there, are numerous and complex within themselves, like pacing, description, characterization, plot. You know, all of these things are separate subjects, and yet you have to integrate them while you're learning to write. I mean, you might have to do all these things on a single page. My strategy was, and is now, set smaller objectives, like writing a great opening scene. And write it so that there's no dispute. There's no dispute. It's a quality piece of writing. You know, you're learning what you need to learn, but in context and in small bites. You know, you limited your problem to an achievable goal. I'm going to read the prologue from IQ. Boyd parked his truck across the street from the school and waited for the bell to ring. It was 90+ degrees outside. The air in the cab was as still and stifling as a closed tomb. Boyd's fishing cap was dark with sweat, streams of it trickling down his face, getting in his eyes and making his sunburn sting. To get some relief, he flapped the collar of his t-shirt and got a cloud of armpit steam so foul it made him laugh. He spent hours in the bathtub, half submerged in the gray lukewarm water, seeing himself do it one way and then another. Jesus Christ, don't be so stupid, Boyd. Think of something else. Come on, Boyd. Don't be so stupid. When he broke a front tooth, he almost called the whole thing off. It happened in the kitchen while he was trying to make chloroform. He found a recipe online, acetone and swimming pool chemicals. Putting it together was easy enough, but he inhaled too much vapor and passed out, smashing his tooth on the sink as he fell to the floor. Later, when Boyd stopped being dizzy, he ate some chunky monkey to soothe his bloody gums and wondered what he'd do if the girl wasn't scared or laughed at him or thought it was a joke. He thought about going to the dentist, but the need was a tapeworm twisting in his gut, frustrated, hungry, and blind. Boyd was halfway through his second pint of chunky when he started to get angry. So what if he was missing a tooth? He was already weird looking. His mouth was a wavy line on his big round face. His other teeth were jagged and coffee stained, and his black button eyes were set too far apart. The rest of him was shaped like an egg. When he was 11 years old, a wild girl named Yolanda called him Humpty fucking Dumpty, while she and her friends from the soccer team kicked him with their cleats until his legs were covered with green and black bruises. Yolanda had warned him not to say, "Hello, Yolanda," but he did it anyway. It was sort of a trademark. "Hello, Ernesto. Hello, Mr. Bleekerman." The bell rang. Boyd played the bongos on the steering wheel and watched the kids pour out of the building, pulling on their backpacks, poking at their phones and messing with each other, screeching like monkeys. The energy coming off them was thrilling at first, but then it made him angry and sad. None of the girls fit the bill. They were too old or too big or too grown-up looking. And then Boyd saw her, pretty and skinny, her hair in a long braid that went down to the middle of her back. Somebody called her. "Carmela, Carmela, we're going now, okay?" Her name was Carmela. Boyd went back to his shitty apartment and took a bath. He floated in the water like a corpse and imagined the panic in her eyes when she woke up in the dark. and felt the duct tape stretched over her mouth and heard his hot breath whistling through the space where his tooth used to be, and saw the black button eyes, vicious and glittering. Hello, Carmela. That's 600 or 700 words. It took me weeks to write, but I was learning and practicing the skills while I did it. The first paragraph, Boyd in the truck, 5 sentences, 5 sentences. So my problem was 5 sentences. How do I arrange and rearrange these? What adjectives do I use? But I was learning to write an opening scene without having to worry about the next 300 pages. But when that sequence was written and done, and I was happy, I could say with confidence, this is a good piece of writing, and I'll let anybody read it. And just as important, I had demonstrated to myself that I could do this. I could do it. I have proof right here in front of me. And I can go on to write the next piece and the next piece with growing confidence. The larger point here is, if you're going to fail while you're writing. No, that's part of the process, but not with the finished product. If you fail with the finished product, man, you are hurt. You're hurt to a degree that you may not recover. So, you know, it reminds me of landscaping my backyard. We were hosting a wedding, and there was a particular part of the yard that we thought, well, needs sprucing up, and we thought that we'd do the work ourselves. You know, it'd be fun, or at least interesting. Well, by the time we were done, it looked like we had done it blindfold. And all of these expensive plants were dead or dying. And now the wedding was 2 days away. So we got fortunate, and it rained, and the wedding, went inside. But in effect, I failed with the finished project, a garden. And I had made really a huge mess of myself. I would say to at least consider it, to writing that opening scene, even if you started a book, right? Or even if you've completed a book. If you're not happy, go back, start with that opening scene, slow down, and do it methodically. Okay, I have a new book. Goodbye Coast, Phillip Marlowe novel. How it happened, the agent for the Chandler estate was in the airport, and he liked the cover of IQ. That's why he picked it. And he read it on the plane, and he took it to the estate. They have a board of directors, and they decided, well, let's give the kid a shot. I was thrilled, of course. Me and my wife are dancing around. And then the next day, it started to get frightening. I mean, here was an opportunity to disappoint thousands of Chandler fans all around the world. And before I began, there were some questions I had to answer. The first question was, am I going to approximate Chandler's writing? Well, no. There's Chandler, and then there's everybody else. And he writes the Marlowe novels first person, and straight up noir. I don't know how to do that. I don't know how to have one character carry an entire book. And, if you've read me, there's multiple subplots and a whole bunch of characters. So I decided in the end that I could only write the way I write, that way. So once that was decided, it took a little of the edge off. Well, then, what does contemporary mean? I couldn't just take Humphrey Bogart, and set him down on Rodeo Drive, driving a Tesla and listening to Jay-Z. In my mind, the job was transposing Marlowe's, for lack of a better word, spirit into a modern character. Remain faithful to his worldview, to that sort of brash self-confidence, and his really abiding sense of justice that he hid behind this wall of cynicism. That was my job, to bring that forward. Now, whether I've done any of those things is up in the air, but that's how I saw the problem. This is meeting Marlowe for the first time. I wanted Marlowe to be striking. You know, I want him to have impact. I wanted to let the reader know this guy is different. And I do this is a technique thing. I do this through the eyes of another character. That way, we get the physical description, but we also get to learn about the observer. You know, what's she grinding on? The new client is Kendra James. She's a movie star, notorious diva, kind of a combination of Madonna and Nicki Minaj. And Kendra hires Marlowe to find her runaway stepdaughter, Cody. But this is their first meeting. Kendra sensed someone was there, like a change in temperature or a breeze through an open window. Marlowe was wearing a dove gray suit, obviously handmade, black silk tie undone, and a milky white Egyptian cotton shirt, thread count in the 180 to 200 range. Understated to everyone except those who appreciated nice clothes. Hello, I'm Phillip Marlowe, he said. He had presence, she decided, surprising for someone who was probably in his early 30s. He was very good looking, but he wore it differently than the other handsome men she had known. It was as if he was unaware of his appearance and would be surprised if somebody remarked on it. He wasn't the least bit intimidated by the A-list celebrities sitting right in front of him. In fact, he seemed resentful. His quiet intensity was appealing. You know, he reminded her of Steve McQueen, if Steve McQueen was a rude, insolent asshole. Would you like something to drink? Kendra asked. Black coffee. She gave him one of her favorite looks, percipient and a little amused, as if to say, you know, I'm way ahead of you, buddy boy. Marlowe met her gaze and she was instantly uncomfortable. His eyes were the kind that took in everything but gave nothing away, the kind that didn't notice but inhaled, the kind that weren't neutral but assessed, gleaned, and adjudicated. So there's our description of Marlowe. And we're judging the impact based on Kendra's reaction. You know, like we do in a watching a sporting event. You know, somebody hits a home run and you see the eyes go. That's the kind of dynamic I was going for here. And it's a technique thing that one of the things you have to learn. Here's a little bit more about Kendra, and also another way to realize a character, to make them react to something, something provocative, you know, like to push a button. Now, Kendra, the diva's diva, she's having a party for her celebrity friends. And Marlowe wants to come, and he wants to bring guests. Well, she's outraged that he would even ask, but he has something on her and coerces him. And so this is what she says. Fine, Marlowe, you win. But if you and your so-called guests want to attend my party, I have conditions. First, don't bring some yokels here from Donkeyville, Oklahoma, playing the harmonica and scratching their ass cracks. And they are not to talk about boll season or how they try to eat roosters for breakfast, or that they only wear shoes at funerals and hayrides. And remember, they must look like they belong. And that means you and your illiterate clodhoppers must wear decent clothes. And by the way, I don't like germs. If you're hayseeds, bring some mutant strain of hoofenmouth into my beautiful home, you won't get a job finding dead flies on the windowsill. That pretty much sums up Kendra. When I'm writing a character, I'm thinking about other characters. That is, I have to create Kendra in a way that there is an immediate friction with Marlowe. So I'm thinking ahead that way and giving Kendra the qualities I think that will rub Marlowe wrong and vice versa. Here's the two of them talking. He's come over to the house to make a report on Cody, what kind of progress he's making. I was hoping I could get a check, Marlowe said. The likelihood of you getting a check is the same as Mel Gibson playing golf with Shimon Peres, Kendra said. I'm not paying you a head of cabbage, you conniving, head up your bunghole, double-dealing homunculus. You don't seem that concerned about Cody, Marlowe said. Why would I be? Goodness knows she can fend for herself. If Tarzan were hunting for her, she'd trick the gorillas into tearing his head off. Once again, you move me beyond words, Marlowe said. Such a big heart. If you opened it, a fly would come out. I did a movie called Maid Marian's Boyfriend, Kendra said. I got very good with a crossbow. I kept it as a souvenir. Interesting, Kendra, great story. If you ever come back here, you infected post-pustule, I'll put an arrow in your pee hole. What? No gratuity? That's the kind of back and forth I was looking for. But it comes out of setting the character up right in the first place. Now, Cody, the runaway stepdaughter, is 17. She's spoiled, she's sullen. She grew up in Malibu. She was raised by showbiz parents. Now, another way to characterize is to have that character answer a question that will reveal. Now here, Marlowe is asked about Cody and her ambitions. I like to be famous, Cody said. Famous for what? Modeling, acting, fashion? No, there's too many dues to pay. Internships, school, all that bullshit, she said thoughtfully. God, it could take years and it might not even happen. Maybe like the Kardashians. They have no talent, but they're celebs. They have big companies and they give each other Lamborghinis as birthday presents. Yet another deluded teenager with big ambitions and no way to achieve them, thought Marlowe. No skills, competence, or education, and no desire to acquire them. All you have to be, the thinking goes, is be in the right place at the right time and you'll be discovered. When Cody asked him to marry him, Cody said, he rented out the AT&T Stadium. He hired a 50-piece orchestra and put the proposal on the Jumbotron. Is that amazing or what? The Kardashians have ruined America, Marlowe thought. So, we've exposed Cody, but we've also heard Marlowe's observations, how he views these things like this. Marlowe has a second case, a woman named Ren Stewart. Ren is from the UK, teaches in a small college, and her ex-husband has kidnapped her 7-year-old son and brought her to America. She spent all her money just getting over here. She has no clue where her ex is, and she has to go back to the UK soon, or she'll lose her job. Now that kind of dramatic device works if you can communicate the character's anguish. I wanted to express her emotions in a different way. Instead of she's crying, she can't sleep, she loves him more than anything, which I did. What I wanted to do was reflect her attachment with her son with something other than her immediate emotions, and you get a different impact. So Marlowe's attracted to Ren, and he finds out she wrote novels and poetry. So he goes online, finds the stuff, and he comes across a poem that Ren wrote for her son, titled Ertl the Turtle. There was a small turtle named Ertl who lived in the sea and was fertile. She ventured on land with a plan in the sand and proceeded to cross every hurdle. In light from the dipper, she flapped her 4 flippers to dig her and dig her away. She dispatched with a row, but it filled her with woe. to leave her small treasures to stray. Despite her devotion, she returned to the ocean and worried and fretted and frayed. No one went back to see their eggs crack, but Erdl could not stay away. She returned to the place where she left in haste and hoped she would be there in time. And there from the sand, wee Erdls began to digger and climb. She watched them with pleasure, her many small treasures, frisky and sunny and gay. She thought she'd done well and wanted to dwell to watch the young toddlers at play. And said she returned to the sea and the spray and the surf and the salt and the swells. It must be wonderful to love like that, thought Marlowe. The poem expresses Wren's emotions in a different way, and you feel it in a different way. Marlowe has a father. He's elderly, he's a grouch, he's decidedly old school. He wants nothing to do with the modern era. Now, someone's trying to kill Cody, so Marlowe stashes her at Emmett's house for safekeeping. He has no idea how to deal with a 17-year-old girl who worships the Kardashians. So here, he's just trying to make contact. What are you doing? Emmett asked. Twitter, Cody said. I'm going to take a wild guess and say that you have no social media. I can't even think about what you post. You know what I wouldn't post? Emmett said. He took a moment to organize his thoughts. First of all, cats. Fucking cats. What makes these people think anybody wants to see one more photo of Fuzzy coughing up a hairball or licking its own patootie? Everybody's seen that crap a million times. At some point in their lives, everybody's owned a goddamn cat. I mean, I really don't get these people. I mean, what are they thinking? Their cat is special? Special how? The cat plays softball? The cat shits in the toilet? The cat has a graduate degree from the University of Meow Mix? I got news for these folks. Nobody's paying attention. Nobody cares about your ordinary, common as weeds, kitty cat, whether it's making its own litter box or dancing the cha-cha-cha. Message received, Emmett. You hate social media. And you know what else people shouldn't be posting? Emmett went on. Food. Fucking food. His voice went up an octave. Oh, look, everybody, I'm in a restaurant. Isn't that amazing? And how about those Brussels sprouts? They came from a farm. I'm the one wearing the apron that says, I post pictures of my goddamn cat. Emmett, you don't really have to do this. You know what else I don't understand? Emmett continued. People posting pictures of their families on every meaningless, made-up occasion. Who really cares about Father's Day? Father doesn't. No, he'd rather be fishing or lying in a hammock smoking a cigar. And it's the same goddamn shot every time. There you are, in your shorts, sandals, and oversized t-shirts, smiling like everybody farted at the same time. Mom, Dad, the kids, your deadbeat brother-in-law, his wife, the kickboxer, and your neighbor, Mr. Cranberry, who spends his whole life fertilizing his fucking lawn. And then there's cousin Sheila, who wears a maternity dress, rain or shine, and of course, Grandpa, who doesn't know where the camera is because he's looking at the fucking sky. It's a long speech, I know. But in addition to character, I'm thinking about entertainment. Novels are entertainment. You know, the speech is like a little stand-up routine, like George Carlin on a rant, but not as good. And you have to remember that as you're writing. It's hard to just get plot, dialogue, all that down, but this is supposed to be entertaining. And you have to ask yourself, what's entertaining? If I left Emmett like that, grouchy old man, he's funny, but two-dimensional. Another way to characterize is to reveal what's meaningful to the character. What moves that character? It could be prayer, it could be a remembrance, or a reunion, or a vulnerability. Now, Emmett's wife, Addie, died some years ago, but he's never gotten over it. There were 2 silver frame photos on Emmett's desk. both of Addie. Her wedding day, holding hands with him, he cut himself out of the picture. The other was Addie sleeping on the couch, her King Charles Spaniel dozing beside her. For years, she struggled to find a name for the dog, but nothing stuck. She ended up calling it D-O-G, which she pronounced D-O-G. She said it sounded Japanese. Addie was the most beautiful woman Emmett had ever seen. Even when she was bald and shriveled with cancer, she was a swan with a minor cold. Emmett was marooned on an island of loneliness. He missed Addie every day, ached for her every day. He was sorry every day. He wondered if there was any vodka in the freezer. If I don't have that, I don't have a character. I'm asked, where my characters originate. And sometimes it's a remembrance of somebody I used to know, or a present friend, or something I saw on TV or read about, even an animal, he looks like a weasel. And then I kind of build it out from there. All my characters are composites, except one. One person from my past made it into a book, unvarnished. This is a little rude, but somehow I think this audience can take it. Right around the corner from my house, there was a pool hall, Stamps Pool Hall. My older brother shot pool in there, but it was too scary for me. It was one of those places where everybody's on parole and the hookers like to show you their bullet wounds. So there was a pimp who hung out there. His name was Charlie O, the initial O. And he was sort of your standardized pimp. He had the perm, bright silk shirt, ring on every finger, white alligator loafers. And once I asked Charlie, what the O in his name stood for. And he said it meant, oh my God, you must be crazy. That's how he said it. And according to Charlie, that's what a woman said the first time she saw his penis. You meet people like that, you have to write a book. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. All right. So, after that,
Hi.
you have a very delayed. So the adjective is bringing it. How do you find Can you repeat that?
She's asking me how I come up with particular adjectives to describe something. I use the thesaurus at least 5 times a page, because there's always a better word, a more precise word, a more vivid word, a more emotional word. And so I'm really in that thesaurus all the time. And if you do this, your writing vocabulary expands. All of you have, great speaking vocabularies, but when it comes to writing, many aspiring writers have a very limited vocabulary. So I would really recommend this to you. Every time you come across an adjective, what's a better one?
What's your writing rhythm? Do you write every day? Is there kind of like a structure you use for yourself, or you just kind of like go flow?
What's my writing day like? I get up about 7:30. I have 3 cups of coffee, and then I sit down and write. And I stay there until about 1 in the afternoon. Then I go do whatever I have to do. I come back around 4, and I put in another couple hours. And I do this every day. In fact, most of the writers I know work 7 days. It's because once you let go of all the strings in the novel, it's really hard to pick them up again and then regain your momentum. So yeah, that's my day. That's my day every day.
You work on one project at a time, or do you have several?
I work on one at a time. My novels are too complex, well, complicated, to try and write two of them at a time. So I focus on one. And as I said, I write in increments. She's asking, I forget, I can't rephrase the question. Oh, yeah, that's what it is. Since I don't count words, what's my daily goal? I don't have one. I write until I'm tired. I write until I'm tired, which is usually about 1 in the afternoon. And it means really making good decisions about what not to do, during those times. I don't go to the gym. I don't take my dog for a walk, and many of you live busy lives, and you just have to forego Pilates, or, you just have to forego feeding the baby. He'll be okay. He'll be okay. It's just call it fasting if your mother is. I don't have a target audience. I write with the audience in mind, but I write the way I write. I mean, if I'm happy, and I have some level of professional judgment, if I'm happy, then that's what I go with. Yeah, it's really fluid. Really fluid. I might get tired earlier and I quit, but there's a certain zone you're in, where your brain is like, can't focus. And if I'm not in that zone, it's just too hard. It's just too hard. So that's what my timing is based on, if I'm in the zone.
So you said that you so do you write it for the draft at all, or do you just write a pretty tight scene? Like you have to go back and rework stuff, or you write it. Like I've heard experienced writers say, I first draft home, or is for me that is not.
No, not mine either. I've learned a few things over the years, and I've written millions of words, and so I have confidence in terms of what I'm writing, and so I just write. Really, I write from beginning to end. Now, and the way I write is I don't have an outline. I have a vague idea of the story, like Marlowe, and I just start writing. But I'm writing like I explained to you about writing in small bits and increments. My increments are a little longer these days, so I may write 20 pages. I look back over the 20 pages, and I start to see from that vantage point what doesn't work, or what's a storyline that's not going to go anywhere, and or what character is going to turn out to be flat. Because there were a number of Kendras before I settled on Kendra. And then if I've written 20 pages, I can start looking ahead, and I can start to see whether I'm going to need another character, or if there's a plot line sitting there, or where I can escalate the tension, that kind of thing. And in the back of my mind, I'm always grinding on the book. And, Jerry Seinfeld said, comedians are always thinking comedy. It's very true with writers. I'm always writing. I write when I'm on vacation. We were in Maui. My wife said to me, do you know there's a beach out there? Sand, food. I don't, I'm not saying any of you should be that obsessive, but it does require discipline.
Really fun to I got a lot of the impact and understanding and characterization we're talking about as far as technique goes. When writing for the screen, though, and you don't have that kind of real estate to invest in introducing a character, do you have any best practices for like how to approach that? One of the problems that I find, just in general, even in email, very overwhelming, because they're trying to extend every word so that the reader gets the point. I find that that's a problem for me. And when I'm writing for the screen, I know that I don't have half a page to talk about. So you have best practices.
Understand the people you're writing for. Okay, they're producers and executives and actors, and they know how a screenplay works. So you don't have to be that specific. What they're thinking is, okay, what do I do with this lines of dialogue? And if the director reads it, it's how do I stage this? So they're ahead of you. You don't have to describe the entire street. You could just say a street in the hood, or a nice house in suburbia. And character descriptions, minimal, because as the movie unfolds, that's how a character develops. You're always thinking visual. If you want to describe a character, you describe them in actions, because we're watching a movie. Right? And a screenplay is 105 pages long, so every word counts. And what it taught me was to learn how to write in brevity. It taught me how to write visually. But I think you have to think visually. It sounds like you're not, but the professionals who are reading your screenplay, they will understand minimal description. They'll fill in everything, even more than a readership, because they can see the movie. They're running a movie through their head. Yeah, it's hard not to overwrite, but eventually you get there. You're welcome. Yeah.
Track of what your characters know through the book of through the plot. What's going to be happening is some of the people are suspects, some of them are witnesses, and you have to, the detective or whoever's trying to solve a problem is going to come back and say, hey, but they didn't know that, or hey, they already knew that. And so I have trouble trying to remember what I've said about the characters in terms of what they know happened.
He's asking about how I remember what my characters know in terms of a mystery. Like at any given time, trying to think back to think about which clues you dropped, that kind of thing. This is peculiar. I don't keep track. I'm pretty good at just storing these things in my memory. But when I wrote High Five, which is especially complicated, I did do Post-its. in terms of this character is doing this. There were five personalities. The client had 5 personalities, and I had to remember what 5 different personalities were doing. And so I did use a post-it kind of thing, what they're thinking at a particular time. But these are just captions. I'm just writing captions. And I could look back over these post-its, and that really helped me remember where the characters were. And you can put little clues on things. You know, he discovered the gun, or he found the fingerprints. I would do that when it's really complicated. I did that some in Marlowe, where I can't remember what Marlowe knows at a particular time, and so I had to do post-its. I don't know. Do I know if there's another Marlowe coming? From me? I don't know. And the reason is it gets complicated. You know, the estate has to license the writing of it. So they have a board of directors and they have to decide. And then the publisher has to decide whether or not they want to publish another Marlowe. And I have to decide whether or not I'm going to lose money, because they take 3 out of every $10. You know, they gave me a break. It's usually 4. So if I'm losing 4 out of every $10 and I'm paying my agent 15%, I lost money writing that book. But I did it because it was Marlowe, it was Raymond Chandler, you know? And I was happy to write it.
I don't know your other work, but I'm just curious, like, you're really up on popular culture, like Nicki Minaj, Ricky Minaj, the Kardashians, and social media. So are you a voracious contemporary, or I should say pop culture person? Like, I would find it a challenge to write about characters who are in their 20s and 30s. They get contemporary or fun for other people. So I have a feeling in your life, you watch a lot of movies, obviously, and TV and other stuff. How do you keep kind of that kind of thing?
He's
How do
asking
you
me,
stay-
Yeah, how are you?
yes, how do I stay so hip? Yes.
It's your natural.
Yes,
Yeah.
come on.
I don't know any of that stuff. I don't know anything about rap music or Nicki Minaj. I don't know. The references I just look up. It's a question of knowing the right question. You know, who am I going to use for this analogy? So I look up the popular singers of the day, and there'll be a list, and I probably won't know any of them. And if I need, say, a diva, I look up famous divas, and then I can pick from a list and see what if it matches my need. And I do that for most things where it pertains to pop culture, because I do not follow it. I don't know the Kardashians, you know. But I was looking for a role model for Cody that didn't do any work and earned a lot of money. Well, you know, it's knowing the question. What is it you want to know, and then you can research the answer to the question and nothing else. My knowledge base is very wide, but it's about this thick. How much editorial control did the Chandler estate have? None. You know, once they hired me as a writer, they can't tell me what to do. I mean, they're only the licensing entity. The editorial entity is the publishing company. They can ask me to do whatever they want. I mean, they can ask me to do an outline and, you know, how I'm going to treat, they can ask me to do anything, but they know me now. And they know that I just start writing. So they never ask me. And then I turn the book in, and then I'll get edited. But I never tell them. I never have to tell them. I never do. It's a wonderful relationship. They trust me now. So I just finished IQ 6, and I just started. I didn't tell them anything, but they don't ask. And I introduced a new major character in IQ 6. I didn't tell them. I mean, it changes the course of the story. So I'm very fortunate that way. I don't know how other writers, you know, are treated in that circumstance. I don't feel any pressure because I just, from the standpoint of, I'm just doing what I do. This is my job. I know how to do my job, and so I will do it. And my only control over my success is to write a good book, is to work on it until I think this is something worth reading. That's, that's my guide. That's my guide.